Code switching is essentially a natural outcome of being bilingual or multilingual. It happens when a speaker chooses between different languages or even different varieties, like dialects or registers, depending on the situation. This flexibility allows speakers to adapt to different contexts seamlessly. You'll notice that we often prefer the term code switching over language switching because it's more inclusive, covering switches between dialects, registers, and other language varieties. Now, moving on to code mixing, which is sometimes called conversational code switching. This occurs when a fluent bilingual switches languages within a single sentence or conversation, often without any obvious change in the social setting. The main reason for mixing is usually to express something that neither language alone can fully capture, an ambiguous or nuanced situation. So, both phenomena illustrate how bilinguals navigate their languages fluidly, which ties back to our overall theme of language flexibility and social interaction. Situational code switching is all about how we change languages depending on the situation we're in. For example, we might switch from speaking with family members to talking to neighbors, and that switch is very deliberate and tied to the external environment. In many multilingual communities, these language choices aren't random. They follow social rules and a sort of linguistic division of labor. Each language often symbolizes a different community or social space, like home, village, or even the nation. These languages serve specific social functions that no other language can fulfill in that context. So, switching languages isn't just about language itself, it's about maintaining social distinctions. Preserving multiple languages through this kind of switching helps keep those social boundaries clear and meaningful. It's a way of expressing identity, belonging, and respect for the social roles tied to each language. This concept really connects to the bigger picture of how language reflects and reinforces social structures in multilingual communities. Let's talk about metaphorical code switching. This happens when a speaker chooses to ignore the obvious external situation and instead uses language to reshape the context or highlight specific interpersonal traits. Essentially, it's about how the words we select can redefine what's happening around us, rather than just reflecting it. What's fascinating here is that it's the choice of language that actually determines the situation, not the other way around. This shows that speakers aren't just passive participants constrained by social norms. They have the ability to manipulate linguistic rules intentionally to make their communication richer and more nuanced. Just like we can manipulate the meaning of words metaphorically, we also use code choices as a powerful rhetorical tool. It helps us convey subtle nuances, social status, or emotional states that might not be immediately obvious through literal language alone. So overall, this concept reminds us how flexible and creative language can be, allowing us to shape perceptions and interactions in ways that go beyond the surface. It's a key part of understanding how language functions in social contexts and highlights the dynamic, strategic nature of our communication. Let's explore the concept of the linguistic cocktail. In code mixing, speakers don't just randomly toss words from different languages together. Instead, they carefully balance these languages to create what I like to call a linguistic cocktail effect. This means that the choices they make are intentional, often serving a purpose beyond just vocabulary. While it might seem chaotic or random at first glance, these language shifts are actually strategic. They help speakers navigate social interactions where sticking to just one language might feel limiting or insufficient. It's like using a toolkit of linguistic options to communicate more effectively in different social contexts. These choices are deeply linked to identity. When someone switches languages or uses a particular variant, they're signaling something about who they are and where they belong. They're positioning themselves in a complex, multidimensional social space, kind of like choosing a social map or a set of signposts. Even in communities where multilingualism is common, the specific language variant someone chooses can reveal their allegiance to a particular social group or identity. It's a way of showing solidarity or distinction, much like wearing a badge or a uniform. So, in essence, code mixing isn't just about language, it's a powerful social tool. It helps people construct and express their social identities, especially in diverse, multilingual environments. Let's talk about structural and syntactic constraints in code mixing. First, it's important to understand that code mixing is not a sign of language deficiency. Instead, it's a rule-governed process, and it's limited by the structure of sentences. This means that speakers follow certain grammatical rules even when mixing languages. Next, evidence shows that the categories we use to classify words, like adjective or predicate, are actually universal. They aren't specific to just one language. For example, a Spanish verb might be followed by an English adjective because both fall under the same underlying syntactic category. This universality helps explain why code mixing can be so fluid and natural. However, while speakers might be able to judge whether a particular mixed construction is acceptable, research indicates that the structural constraints on mixing can differ between communities. So, some groups might be more flexible than others, depending on their specific linguistic norms. Overall, these constraints highlight that code mixing is a complex, rule-based phenomenon rooted in universal linguistic principles, but also shaped by community-specific practices. It ties into our broader theme of understanding how bilinguals navigate and structure their language use seamlessly. Let's talk about variability and social function. What this slide shows us is that there's no such thing as a single, uniform grammar, whether for an individual or a community. Instead, linguistic choices are deeply connected to social identities and specific contexts. Every time we speak, we're not just choosing words, we're engaging in a process of ongoing change and adaptation. Language is constantly being replicated and modified as we switch between different codes or styles. And this variability isn't random. It's a tool that speakers use to position themselves socially. It helps us manage our face, or the social image we want to project during interaction. So, in essence, language variability is a way for us to navigate society, express who we are, and connect with others. It ties directly into the broader theme that language is a social act, always shaped by and shaping our social environments.